Okay, so we're going to now look at probably the most complicated version of a cast on. This is the version that I teach in my workshops, my face-to-face live workshops. And the reason I teach that method is because I think it's the most secure and also the prettiest cast on, if that makes sense. And it leaves a really lovely edge to your blanket. So you'll see that in a moment. So unlike the previous cast-ons, the easier ones, we're actually going to measure off some yarn at the beginning. You'll need, for a blanket that's about 80 centimetres in width, you're going to need about 3 meters of yarn. Now, some people will end up with some left over after we've used it, and some people will use most of it up and just have a little tiny section on the end. The reason I have to say 3 meters, which is a sort of generous measurement, is because we all have different arms, different shapes and sizes, and we'll all make slightly different size stitches. So we need to make sure that we end up with enough yarn to make our cast on row. And yes, some people will have a little bit left over. If you do have a little bit left over and you don't want to end up with any wastage, then once you've cast on once and you can see how much you have left over, you can then, if you wanted to, because you've got the luxury of doing it in your own time, you're not in a class, you can undo your row of cast on and measure off a smaller amount. Okay, so when you've measured your 3 meters, there we go. It's essentially, it's 3 and a bit the width of the eventual blanket size. That's what we're aiming for. So here's my measured yarn. I'm going to put that, I'm going to call that the tail, and I'm going to put that on my lap so it's out of the way. And then the point we've measured to is this there, and the ball is over here on my left. So at this point we're going to make a slip knot, much like the other versions of a cast on. So we're going to cross the yarn over itself like that, and the yarn that's on the front we're going to pick up, pop through the back and pull up a loop like that. And then if we pull on the working yarn side, it tightens into a knot, and if we pull on the other side, we get our loop adjustment. So this loop, as opposed to the other cast on methods, is actually going onto your right arm. Now I'm actually doing this over clothing in this video because I wanted to show you that you can, if you've got a nice tight fitting top on, you can actually still go over the top, so that's fine. So what we want to do is our little wiggle test. So we're going to make sure it goes all the way up to the elbow, because we will stack all the other stitches on behind it, and then we'll bring it back down to the wrist, so it will be baggier at the wrist end like that. And now we're actually going to get our left hand involved in the process. So our left hand is going to basically manage these 2 strands here. So this is the working yarn and this is the tail that's on my lap. So it's going to do some interesting things. So I'm going to just show you a few different things with this hand. You'll want to probably watch it a few times and then have a go doing it with me. So potentially stop and rewind if you need to. Ultimately, your hands, you want them in front of you with your thumbs pointing towards you, or at least the left hand must have your thumb pointing towards you. Okay. Now I've got this out in front of me on a table, but you will have your hands upright in front of you like that. Okay. So your left hand, you want to open and create a V shape between your index finger and your middle finger. Okay. And in that V shape, you will take the working yarn and just prop it in there. Okay. And then your thumb, which is pointing towards you of your left hand, is going to basically scoop up the tail that's on your lap. So you end up with this kind of catapult sort of thing going on. Now the next important thing is to note the distance between your hands. So if you fold your hands in to each other like that, you want your fingertips to touch. Okay. Now then, the tail that's hanging over your left thumb like that, that's basically where we're going to, all the action happens around that thumb, okay? So what we're going to do is actually go higher with our left hand and lower with our right. So it's just a switch like that. We're just going to slide our hand down, because if we were to do the next move with our hands in parallel like that, we actually wouldn't be able to see what we were doing. So we're going to go down like that. So next move is to take your right hand and cross it over onto your left forearm. So if you have a look at my thumb there, if I take this off, there's no loop around it, but if I cross over, there's kind of a loop around it now. It's a crossed over piece of yarn, okay? So we need to go inside there, and we're going to go inside from underneath, under there. So we're going up inside, and your whole hand comes through. So when your thumbs brush past each other, you know you're in the right place. If you were to go, I'll do that one more time. So we're crossing over. If I was to go underneath here and find my way up through the back, for example, I haven't gone where my thumb is, so I'm in the wrong place. All I need to do is just reverse and come out, and I'm back to the beginning again. Okay, so you want your thumbs to brush past each other and you know you're in the right place. So let's try that again. So we're crossing, going high, crossing over. There's the thumb. When you're satisfied you've found that loop, so we're looking at this loop here around my thumb, okay? And then we're going up inside, whole hand goes in, fingers brush past each other. In my workshops I get people to wave when they've come through the other side, so I know they're in the right place. And then if you see this yarn that's sitting in the V shape of my fingers at the back, it's just waiting there behind. I've come through with my hand, and I'm just literally, it's just perfectly placed for me to just grab hold of it like that. And once I've grabbed it, I'm going to pull it back towards me, and the loop that is on my left thumb is just going to drop over the top of that hand that's coming back towards me. So I'm pulling that loop back, and there we have it. There is a loop that's come through. I can let go of everything else. All I'm interested in is what I grabbed and pulled through. So that loop is my next stitch, and that goes straight on to my right hand like that to join the first loop. Now it's all very baggy here at the moment, so what we're going to do is pull on the tail, and that will just tighten that stitch for you. And if I pull these outwards like that, you can see that they're the same size. So I'm pretty confident that if I slide these up my arm, they will both fit all the way, and they do. Okay, it's always good to double check, because the last thing you want is to start finding that your stitches are getting really tight and you're cutting off the circulation in your arm. So keep an eye on that. Okay, so let's do that one more time. So tail is on your lap, working yarn is off to your left. Actually, just one note actually for anyone who is left-handed. I do show the opposite way round for a left-handed person, but actually 9 times out of 10 people who are left-handed insist on doing it the right-handed way to cast on. It's just 14 stitches, and they find it actually perfectly doable. They rather do it that way for some reason, so it's entirely up to you. If you're doing this left-handed, check out my left-handed version video, but this is quite popular for left-handers, so there we go. Right then, so to get started again, we're getting our left hand ready with its thumb pointing towards us, creating a V shape, propping the working yarn in that V. Then our thumb that's pointing towards us is scooping down to collect the tail. You want to make sure the tail is hanging over that thumb, a bit like it as it would on a nail on the wall. So literally just hanging either side of it like that. If this tail ends up on the outside of your arm, you'll know it's not working because it's just not hanging right over your thumb. So imagine that thumb is like a nail on the wall, and nail rhymes with tail, so that should help you remember. Okay, so we've got that ready. The distance between your hands, you'll start to get a sense of what is a good distance after you've done a couple. So then we go left high, right low. Then we take our right hand, cross over to our left forearm to create that loop. okay, this loop here. And when we're satisfied that we found it, we go up inside the whole hand, come out the other side and grab hold of the yarn that's sitting in our V shape of our fingers at the back there. That's the working yarn. Pulling it towards us at the same time, dropping that loop on our thumb off the back, and we have a new loop. So we slide that straight on and we pull on the tail to tighten that stitch. Okay, and off we go. So we've still got 14 stitches to go, so we can carry on. So left hand is managing both strands, working yarn through the V shape and tail hanging over the thumb. Then we go left high, right low, right hand crosses over. Here's our loop. We're going up inside that loop. Thumbs brush past each other, come all the way through with our hand, grab the yarn, the working yarn in the V shape of our left hand, and pull it back towards us, dropping the loop off the top of our hand, and there is our loop that goes on. Pulling on the tail to tighten. Okay, I'll do one more and then you can rewind me if you need to. So left hand, V shape, the V shape props up the working yarn, the thumb scoops down and picks up the tail, go high with our left hand and low with our right, right hand crosses over to the left forearm, check out the loop around your left thumb because that's where you're going next, up inside it from underneath. Ooh. Hand comes all the way through, thumbs brush past each other, grab hold of the yarn at the back and pull it back towards you, dropping the loop off the back of your hand, and your new loop you just feed straight on. Pull on the tail to tighten. Now I just want to show you the effect. Okay, so that creates this really nice stitching at the base of your blanket. It's really neat. And it stays neat. So this is definitely my preference for a cast on. It's a little bit more fiddly as you've seen, but once you've done 3 or 4, you know, the remaining 10 are actually going to be quite simple for you to do. So you'll kind of get into a rhythm of it because your brain will suddenly won't see it as something weird and alien that you've never done before. Okay. So if you carry on and do those 14 stitches onto your right arm, I will see you next in the knitting video.